Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Roy's Tie-Dye Sci-Fi Corner. This is episode number 170, Space 1999, year one episode, Ring Around the Moon. With me tonight to discuss this classic episode from the classic science fiction television series is my good friend, the one and only Captain Phil.
We
Phil.
acknowledge.
How are you, Phil? Welcome.
I'm good, and yeah, it's been quite the week. And we moved this around a little bit, which I don't think was a good idea, Roy, because the universally beloved episode of Space 1999, Ring Around the Moon, has a massive following, and people are going to be confused because you don't want to miss this. This is a hotter ticket than a Taylor Swift concert.
Don't make me laugh too much, Phil.
I won't. we crashed Ticketmaster just to come onto this. So the real question is not why am I here. The real question is, Roy, why did you choose this? You want to punish everybody out there? I love this episode. There's so much history with this thing that's personal to me, and I'm sure I'll be talking, to my therapist about this years to come. How it finally pushed me over the edge. But what brought you to this?
Well, before we get started, you and I had talked, and you had a desire to talk about this episode because this is an episode that you very much enjoyed. And I have to say, too, this episode definitely has enjoyable prospects and enjoyable parts to it. And we will go through it a little at a time because I'm sure we have Space 1999 fans out there. In fact, I know we have Space 1999 fans out there. And we'll be examining it. Now, before we start with that, I do want to welcome our viewers that are out there. I see Dennis Chevalier is actually joining us from Canada. Dennis, welcome to the show. The Hague is out there. John Hague, welcome, John. Good to see you out there.
Brave souls all.
Yes, and Dennis is joining us from Canada. John is joining us from Pennsylvania. Randy Lee is joining us. Welcome, Randy. Good to see you as well. Christian is also joining us, and he's joining us from Canada. He's saying, hi, Roy, how are you? And hi, Captain Phil. I knew you would be there. Thanks for the well wishes too, Christian. And thanks for the well wishes from everybody too. I am on the mends. I got my butt kicked with COVID this week, folks. It was nasty. So I'm on the meds, and I'm getting there. So anyway, your comments and your positive thoughts were much appreciated. I see Jenny Bonnie Millett is out there. She's saying hi, Alphins. And Jenny is actually joining us from Australia. So welcome, Jenny. I'm glad that we can actually you can be tuning in. And it's actually on, well, tomorrow is yesterday for you. And another time, another place, I should say, would be more appropriate because today is Saturday and tomorrow is Sunday.
What?
And what? Deborah's joining us from Phillipsburg. Hey, Deborah. Good to see you out there. Thanks for joining tonight as well.
They named that town after me, Phillipsburg.
Did they really?
Yes.
Yeah. See, I learned something new every time on this show, Captain Phil.
Yeah. Little known fact.
Randy Lee is joining us. Actually, he's saying I'm in Canada, South Wisconsin. So we are well represented throughout the United States. Martin is actually joining us too, and Martin is joining us from New York State. Jack Daly is out there as well. Welcome, Jack. It's just good to see everybody out there too tonight. So what I thought, Phil, before we start getting into Ring Around the Moon, I wanted to point out that you actually have not been on this show since the very beginning, and you were involved from ground zero because when I actually started this show, which was back, the premiere date, ironically enough, was April 3rd, 2020. And you were my very first guest.
Yes, and I almost crashed it. It was like the Artemis launch. It kept on being delayed, and then you put me on. And I had this brilliant idea to put the, One Step Beyond music from the band Madness on, because I thought that would be cute. And it got you kicked off of YouTube. So I promised not to play any sound effects, music. I promised not to even whistle. I don't want you to lose your YouTube status. YouTube is the big time.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. No, and to be fair, it was just a little snippet that got cut off, so it's all good.
It was hilarious. I loved it. But no, that was actually a great thing you did, and it was an episode of One Step Beyond I hadn't seen before, and it was quite really good, and and it just took me forever to find it.
Yeah.
It's so hard to find, but
What
no.
the irony
And
about that
how many
episode?
episodes now? This is episode number what?
This is 170.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
More
This is
episodes in Space 1999.
Yeah, I mean I'm very excited about the progress of the show. Technically, the show is within its third season. I declared that April 3rd is the season's cutoff date. So when April 3rd, 2023 comes, we will be launching the fourth season of this show, which is incredible. And it's because of all the viewers out there and the positive response. And it's been a lot of fun. It's been great because, as we know, we were right in the not even within 3 weeks into COVID when we started this show. And I wanted to do something creative because I'm involved with Country Gate, the theater, and we were all in lockdown. We had just done a murder mystery in February of that year. And I was like, what can I do? What can I do? And I had been edging to, bring people together and to do something like this. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to go with it. And I want to show a clip. This is a recording that I actually did. I did 2 of these. I'm only going to show the one, but I did this a couple days prior to the show premiering because I had to get in front of the camera and I was trying to figure out how to do this. And, it's me, my laptop, and then my iPhone. And, Shari was trying to be very supportive with everything. And I remember you and I were having discussions earlier in the week. You and I were doing like a test on the iPhone, and we were trying to, because originally I was going to try to do it that way. That way you could be on with me, and it didn't work. And we actually wound up doing audio only that night with the first episode. But I'm going to share the screen, folks. And
I'm better audio only, just so you
know. So hang on 1 second. I'm going to do this. And
the lost tapes.
Yes, this is the lost tapes, and this is back around April 1st of 2020, and this is when I was doing the very first, the first or second promo. Hi, everyone. This is Roy Belquist. I hope everyone out there is doing well. I wanted to give a reminder that this Friday, April 3rd at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Remembering Science Fiction Television Shows of the 1960s and 1970s will be premiering right here on my Facebook page. Please join me with Phil Merkel of Captain Phil's Planet of USB Stony Brook as we discuss a science fiction television show from the 1960s, as well as interact with you, the audience, and also have a really good time as we look back in the nostalgia of science fiction. Again, hoping to see everyone there this Friday, April 3rd, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah, so when the Blu-ray comes out, Roy, you can put that in the extras.
Oh boy,
that's really awesome.
So
now this is your 4th season, right? You're starting your 4th.
This is actually my 3rd season. We're still in the 3rd season.
So when you go to the 4th season, are you going to keep Freddie Freeberger as your producer? He seems to be working out for you. Not much like Trek and Space 1999. Is everything working with him?
Yeah, he hasn't been talking too much to me lately, but
the ghost of Freeberger comes to you.
The seance specter.
Review all that glisters.
Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to share that. I thought that was kind of fun to look back on. So anyway, thanks for being a part of this, Phil. Thanks for joining me back. And interesting enough too, the original title of the show was Remembering Science Fiction Shows of the 1960s and the 70s, and the reason being was when I was up in Ticonderoga, I was doing like a tutorial or like a classroom type of scenario where I would talk about shows. So that's where I thought, I could carry that over. So anyway, but with that, as time progressed and the title was kind of limiting and the title was kind of long, and I was trying to come up with something that was going to be a little bit more, spazzier and something that
success. You've succeeded.
Yeah. So Roy's tie-dye sci-fi corner definitely seems to be appropriate. It's not pigeonholing me so much. I mean, the show focuses on, again, originally it was for the 60s and the 70s. It's primarily now it's the 50s, 60s, 70s, and occasional 80s. I do like the 1980s as well. I mean, that's kind of where stuff that we had grown up with. But anyway, that's the core of the show. And just
have I ever said the correct title of your show live on the radio ever? I don't know if I always mess it up.
Only when I'm on with you.
I call it Sci-Fi Distilled. I call it Roy's Corner and Die Tie.
And sometimes you call me Ross.
Yes. Well, that's your fault because you have a best friend with this whose name sounds almost like yours. So,
and I do, and I have to say, an integral part of this show. I mean, this show has evolved and has grown over that time period, and I am very fortunate because this show has not only allowed me to, basically, folks, I said it once just tonight, but just to connect with all the viewers and the people that love science fiction just as much as I do. And then folks are even casual fans of science fiction, but it's helped me to meet new people, new friends, connect with new friends, stay connected with friends. But also it helped me to reconnect with a very old friend who is Ross Amico, who I had not seen in literally 34 years back from the high school days. So it really, really worked out very well that he came back. We connected, he came on, one show became 2, then 4, then 8. And then, he is an integral part of the show. I mean, he's as much as part of the show as I am, and I'm just very fortunate to have him. So unfortunately, he's not here tonight. But just for the record, as you know, Ross is not a Space 1999 fan.
The horror.
So anyway,
I kept telling you should have made, instead of Black Sun, you should have had Ross watch this episode, just watch the sparks fly. I would have just loved to have seen him watch this and then be bouncing off that wall of CDs in his house, as he describes what went on in this episode.
Yeah, that would not have been fair to Ross.
It would have been fun, though.
Anyway, I also want to welcome, we also have another guest tonight that is joining us, and he's waiting patiently, and I'm going to bring him in. As folks know, he's been on the show before, and he's also a dear friend, just as yourself, Phil, and that is the one and only Mr. David Hirsch from Starlog Magazine.
We're not worthy. We're not worthy.
How you doing, David?
I'm doing good.
Good to see you. I feel like I was just talking to you just a little while ago.
Yes, me too.
Deja vu.
It's great to have you.
I just can't believe it's the 21st century and I'm talking with Starlog's David Hirsch and that we've hung out and talked. It's like, I don't know. I feel like I've fallen into a parallel dimension where I'm actually a cool person. It's just amazing.
Come on, you're the coolest. You're the one with the captain.
I am, but I took that command by force.
Whatever way you could get it.
True.
You've got it, Phil. So that's all that matters. The important thing is tonight, the three of us are hanging here together. And we're bonding, we're having a moment, and you're helping me get through COVID.
And it's the eyes of Triton.
Take a drink every time we're together. Probably.
Yeah, that might help too. I'm actually tonight. It's only cranberry juice and water. So. Yeah. I see Linda's. Oh, there you go. Linda's joining us. Linda, welcome. She's saying, and Linda is actually joining us on YouTube. She's one of our YouTube patrons out there. She's saying, I remember at Breakaway Convention, there was a girl there wearing a souvenir button from Alpha, Minnesota. I guess she was commenting about a comment that Randy Lee was making, because I think he was from there. Martin is commenting a 3rd season and not a Freiburger in sight. And let me see here. Dave, Dennis Chevalier said, "Hi, David. Can't wait for your new book." So yeah, we are going to be discussing all of that tonight.
Supposed to be shipping out this week. So
I actually think I got notice from Jamie, that my copy is shipped.
Good.
Yeah, excellent. And you know what? I want to say thank you too, David, because I had been waiting to put it in, and then I got sidetracked. Everybody's busy and everything, and then I saw the post that it was down to 100 books, and I was like, oh God. So I immediately went right to the computer, and I just I put it in, and I got that in right away. So
that's why it sold out.
Yeah,
because you put that in.
Yeah, I'm glad you
worry,
did that.
there are paperbacks and Kindle versions coming soon.
No, so that's good.
Yeah.
Just as a quick aside, I noticed Jamie is publishing these books. They all seem to have the same look. Like, are these books from the various authors meant to like all sit together on the shelf? They seem to
they're looking for uniformity, but he uses the same artist.
Yeah, because it looks like they would sit well together, even with the different.
Oh, we the first proof we got, we really liked, but we had to make some changes because he used a bunch of different images, and we kept thinking, well, this isn't in the book. We could change this to this. So all of a sudden, he had the space dock. I said, well, then we should have the Ultra Probe. If we we have the story in there. We changed the eagle sitting on the ground to a lab eagle because we have a bit on. I'm forgetting the name of the stupid rock episode from the second season.
Oh, all that glisters.
All that glisters. We have Robert got hold of 2 early draft scripts, which have some differences in them, but no, it was one early draft script with different pages, and he had to make sense of it. I mean, bless him, he worked his tail off, so it makes some sense. But we ended up with a cover that we're all happy with. And, you could find it on my Facebook page. You can see what the cover looks like if you haven't gotten it yet. So,
no, it's an exciting, like we were talking about earlier today, because we were talking with Warren about the Calvary convention that's going to be coming up next year, and it is an exciting time for Space 1999 fans right now, folks, because I mean we are literally coming into the 50th anniversary territory. As and it's here, so there's going to be a lot of cool stuff coming up, and your books that you've done with Robert is just another example of that. And if you haven't gotten it already, folks, here's the first one. So just remind everybody.
Yeah, so still selling very well on Tellus. We're really pleased about it.
It's definitely an exciting time. I want to welcome. I see that Nick McCarty's joining us, and he's joining us from the UK. Nick, welcome. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for being out there as well too. And Dennis Chevalier is commenting, saying that the cover looks amazing. So
thank you. Yeah. We were just so thrilled with it.
So we are going to talk about this episode of Ring Around the Moon. And I know Phil is very, very excited about this. And for the folks out there who don't remember this episode, this was actually Space 1999's. This was actually the 4th episode that was filmed, as if you're going by production order, of the series, which I did not realize until back in the day. And I have to say, David, when I got this back in 1970, I got it in 78. It came out in 77. Right. You had an episode guide in the back. And when I saw that, it made a lot of sense, because when you're watching this episode and you see the opening credits, this is, for Barry Morse,
right?
He's listed it as that. So of course, sequentially, it does make sense. And
the design of Main Mission, because Main Mission still has the staircase to the windows.
Right.
They don't have Kano's desk. That didn't come in until like episode 5.
So those changes were not apparent yet. So yeah. So this is like the beginning. This is things that are just kind of evolving. So before we actually get into the story, because Phil and I are going to kind of talk about some of the points of it and get into that. What can you tell us about this? Because I mean, you covered this in your first book and have information in regards to how this story actually came to be.
Yeah. Well, as Chris Penfold related to us, there were a lot of story ideas bouncing around at the beginning of the show. Some of them were based on ideas that Jerry and Sophie Anderson came up with when they did their original UFO 2. Other stories were submitted by writers, people on the production staff in some cases. And I got hold of a document from ITC New York, which was a working title story outline called The Fly Trap, which is credited to someone named Donald Johnson without an H, if anyone's looking it up. Chris Penfold cannot recall who Donald Johnson was. He just knows that there were some story outlines submitted. And apparently it was eventually taken over by Eddie DiLorenzo, and he is credited as the screenplay for the episode.
Okay, and actually, and that leads into something that Alan Russell. Alan, welcome to the show. Alan's joining us from the UK as well. He's saying one question. Not much has really been said about Edward D. Lorenzo, his career, why he actually left the show, apart from some Johnny Byrne remarks, went on to become an author. And I know what you're referencing, Alan, because I actually saw that online as well, too, where that.
Well, you also have to remember that there was a lot of rewrites on the show because stories were bouncing back between London and the United States and then back and making changes because ITC's New York office was making all kinds of demands on the show. ITC London wanted some, everyone had their fingers in the pie.
Right.
So with a lot of money riding on this show, they were constantly trying to please so many different masters, including the actors. So there was burnout. I mean, Chris Penfold burned out at episode 20 and left the show. And then Johnny Byrne took over as his job from that point. It just, so many people were trying to do rewrites. I think there was just a lot of burnout across the board.
Yeah.
Is there a chance this Donald you're talking about, David, could it be a pen name for Donald James, who worked on the Supermarionation and UFO?
Well,
show?
Donald James is a pen name for. No,
David?
am I thinking? No. Donald James. Yeah, Donald James did work for Jerry Anderson, and he eventually partnered with
Tony Barwick.
Tony Barwick, and they wrote books as James Barwick.
Yeah.
So one book which they gave me, which was a really good World War II adventure. Now that I don't think they wrote any science fiction, it is entirely possible that he just wrote this for a couple of bucks under the table too.
Wow.
Yeah.
He may have been working something, but as I said, Chris could not recall who he really was.
Well, plus Chris came in with space, right? Chris wasn't involved with UFO.
No,
correct?
Chris was originally supposed to be the story consultant for UFO 2.
Yeah.
And then when ITC New York was demanding an American writer on the show, they brought in George Bellac.
Yes.
But they allowed Chris to stay on as George's second in command. So they worked alongside, and it just so happened that Chris and George became really good friends. They really got along with each other. And when George bowed out of the show before shooting even started, Chris went and did the further rewrites on the script that became Breakaway. And he took no credit because he believed he was doing all of George's writing. That he wasn't making any changes other than adapting it to the production needs. And to the day he passed away, he was very good friends with George, and he wrote a really nice tribute to George in our book.
Yeah,
It
says a lot about
these early episodes, these early stories, where just information is just like lost to the sands of time.
Yeah, I mean, we were lucky to get this and the outline for Earthbounders for the first book, and then we got some other new material for the later book. But it's interesting because the premise of the story is the same, really. The major changes, there's two major changes. One, a lot of the transit from the computer, which is an asteroid in the original story instead of this ball of light, is by spaceship. There's some alien spaceship that's sent down, somebody gets in, goes back, and obviously they made that change just for expediency. But also the fact that they created a character. What was his name? I'm looking up here. Character named Donovan.
Yeah.
And Donovan was among a lot of characters that appeared in early outlines that they eventually changed to characters we're more familiar with. In this case, the Donovan character is the technician who's killed off early in the episode. And then the person who becomes the slave to this computer is Helena instead of Donovan. And that gives us a much more investment in what is happening in the story because it's happening to one of the characters that is a regular who's been established. They did the same thing with Earthbounders, where they took a basically a new character and changed it to Commissioner Simmons. So again, what happens at the end of the episode is much more dramatic because you already are invested in this character.
Yeah, that really hit home. That was such a power. That was, as much as everybody hated Simmons, that was such a powerful ending. I mean,
it was an end, because he wasn't really as nasty as they kind of sort of made out the character that was in Earthbounders. But at the same point, he was a character that had no purpose there,
right?
And he didn't deserve that kind of ending.
The irony, though, is with that, what Jonathan Harris feared on Lost in Space was what they did to Commissioner Simmons in Space 1999, because he was the quintessential bad guy. I mean, he was always trying to kill them, and he was so fearful that he was going to get written out, and rightfully so, that he took his character into a different direction, and it was loved by Irwin Allen. And
I give kudos to Big Finish, because they decided to bring Simmons in as a regular character.
Yeah.
And they managed to make him work in such a way where he still was an outsider, but there were times when the character had value.
Mm.
And it's Simmons' fault that they're in this situation too. He pushed and pushed and pushed.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So
right.
he's basically Baltar in the reimagined Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Baltar was great in the pilot, but once they brought him into the series, it became a bit of a joke.
No, I'm talking about the reboot, the reboot.
The reboot handled it completely different. It worked. Yeah. It managed to work him in because he always had this. Yeah, we kind of like the guy now, but he still can do some really underhanded things. But that's the value of having a character that audiences are invested in, whether they like to hate him or not. So in Flytrap, to have Donovan, who is just a walk-on character, you really don't get affected by what the threat is as much towards the end, because the alien computer is looking for information and has the ability to hold Alpha at ransom, but it's like, well, okay, so who cares about this guy?
But they flipped that in with Anton Zoref. They showed his home life. He's married, he's waking up, he's going to work, and he became such a sympathetic character. But this other character in Ring, he walks on, he gets hit with the orange light, and he starts typing like a lunatic. So there's no connection. Whereas with Force of Life, you feel bad, and then Helena's sitting there with his widow at the end. It's like, well, there's just stuff we don't understand in space. I was like, what?
Oh, yeah,
my husband's dead.
That was such a fantastic episode.
Yeah, I mean, it's not saying that there are a lot of episodes where things happen to characters we've only just met, because we're dealing with a show that was episodic in nature, where they could scramble the episodes in any way they wanted.
Yeah.
Today, you can have a character that's on for 5 episodes and kill them off, or have something tragic happen to him that again invests the audience. But you couldn't do that back then. And when you think of the potential the show could have had,
but I have to
say
though, really real quick, that the teaser for this episode is one of the longer ones. I don't think it's as long as Space Brain. I think Space Brain is probably the one that has the longest, but this is probably number 2.
Mm-hmm.
This was a solid 5 minutes, and the way they set it up, I mean, you have Ted Clifford coming in, and they establish that he's friends with Tanya, because he goes over, he puts his hand on her, and that's something somebody does not usually do unless there's like a closeness. So that the guy,
Helena and Kano call him by his first name.
Right.
It's obviously a character that they know he's a technician that's probably been there repairing every time a light bulb goes out or something. So
exactly. So you have that it's an established character, at least from the background, and he's trusting, he's friendly, that he's known. So it was a great setup with that.
Yeah.
And then establishing everything that happens, he's just going about his business, and then all of a sudden this light from space essentially makes contact. We don't know what happens. He drops his toolbox, and then everybody in the place shudders because it's really quiet. And then he starts to do his thing where he's starting to go by the computer. And then Sandra even makes the comment that, he doesn't know a thing about computers. Right. And then they do that whole thing where Paul tells Kano to stop him, and then he picks him up by the throat, and then he's got him like in air, and then he just tosses him.
Right.
But that whole sequence is very powerful. And then what happens is the moon gets hit, the entire moon gets hit in this globe of light, and then everything gets thrusted, and then they're trying to recap, and then essentially it ends on the notion where that they are now the prisoners of the planet Triton. So as far as a hook or bringing you into the story, I think they did a really good job with it.
Well, plus the fact that the episode had a very unusual sound and music design.
Absolutely, yes.
That helped. That helped a lot. All the episodes that were sort of dark and mysterious in nature all had these really unusual sound designs, which I think made them really work and stand out, because it was something you didn't expect from the average TV show back then.
Right. Yeah, and it really...
So the Triton probe has the ability to reach into people's minds and control them. It has the ability to stop the moon. It has the ability to make weird psychedelic atonal music happen on the moon's surface. But it needs the information from the computer to be typed in manually on a QWERTY, well, not even a QWERTY keyboard, on a wacky no marking keyboard, like V'ger in Star Trek: The Motion Picture, when V'ger is running their records through the consoles on the bridge. This is like, shows you that nobody, even in 1979 for Star Trek, nobody knows how computers work in the 1970s.
Well, I don't think there was actually the idea that a computer would be able to talk to another computer wirelessly or anything.
Yeah.
That was probably something, because computers, again, were new. That's why they don't show up in a lot of... Someone made the comment once, if you go back to any of the Super Marionation puppet shows, that computers almost don't factor into a lot of things. It's not until, I think, UFO that the computer is used in a couple of episodes. There's one episode where the computer's just trying to solve a problem, and they keep asking the same question 10 different ways to get an answer. But it's like nobody understood how computers really worked.
Right.
But Connor was able to plug into the computer via, in Peary. And that, of course, hadn't been invented yet in this episode, but that would have been a real time saver for the Tritons if they had just grabbed him instead.
Yeah. I think that also came down to, at different points in the show, different writers read different materials and had different concepts.
Right. But you're right, Phil. That if that had been established, let's say, in the writer's guide, that potentially could have been a point that maybe could have been made, but then they maybe would have said that they would have been too fearful because of everything that was going on. And, all the other types of scenarios that have been mentioned where, there was hesitation with Koenig joining with the, electronically with, who was it in Space Brain with Kelly.
Kelly, yeah.
Doing that. Also, there was a fear about
Kano being touch my brain.
Yeah. Also, Kano being fearful of that with Peary, and must not touch my brain. Also, I want to bring out Chris Paulson's out there. Chris, welcome to the show. He's saying worst music ever. Just a comment that he's
no, he's wrong. He's wrong.
So, well, we're going to talk about that, Chris.
I will reluctantly admit it's not the worst, but the creation of it was probably the worst experience.
Yeah.
It's great. Well, but I don't know. Roy, you let us know when we want to go off on that, because I am locked and loaded to talk about that.
No, we're gonna approach upon that. I just want to bring up a few other comments. Andrew Ray's joining us from Australia, but he's unable to stay on live. But he just wanted to say hi, so just wanted to put that out there. And then he's gonna watch.
I just interviewed a marvelous composer from Australia.
Your opinion, yes, thank you.
Yeah, he's gonna watch us on the re-record. So we'll see you out there. Thanks for stopping by, Andrew. David Francois is out there. David, welcome. Also, Alan Russell, thank you for your well wishes. Alan was actually asking about the book too. In regards to if there is a revised version of your latest book out there, David.
It's too soon for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But just putting it out there. So,
yeah.
But in regards though, and Chris is commenting, yes, Vic Elms, Chris, you got it. So,
yes, we know.
We do know. But
Yellow River from the band Christie.
My beef with this episode though is there's just, it could have been tighter. that the plot was not strong enough. Now, let me ask you this, David. In the original concept, is it just that this probe, whatever this probe was trying to obtain information about Alpha? And if so, was it because did they feel that Alpha was potentially a threat to itself or maybe to its home planet? Was that really? I'm having a problem remembering that.
I think it's just the probe was always just collecting data.
Okay.
It's kind of like early V'ger-ish. I'm actually scrolling right now through the outline just to see if there's something that the probe says.
And David, it's a generic planet named Triton. It's not the moon of Neptune, correct?
It wasn't even called Triton in the original script. It was called Uralt. Triton, I think, became something Eddie DiLorenzo. And I think the fact that it was the moon of Neptune, that was E.C. Tubb who put that in. I don't think that was in the original script at all, because Tubb tried to connect all the episodes in such a way. I think in Tubb's adaptation, he mentions that the information that Bergman comes up with identifying it came from the Voyager tapes.
Okay.
Yeah, because he had the benefit of looking back at all the scripts, or at least all the scripts outlines.
He held this outline for later to adapt for later. I don't think they followed much of a production order.
Yeah, and Alan Russell said the episode itself is a little bit of a mess, but still interesting. E.C. Tubb in his novelization tried to clear it up.
Yeah.
Which book is it in, guys?
I'd have to look it up. I know it's in a later book.
Okay.
It's probably in
on the first one, I believe.
Hold on. I don't do this very rarely.
Let's see.
Is it Astral Quest?
I think it could be. I'd have to look it up online.
It might be Astral Quest.
Yeah.
Or I'll just look it up in the year one omnibus too. It's in there.
He calls it Uralt, and for some bizarre reason, Professor Bergman's able to figure out the planet doesn't exist. Now, that doesn't make much sense. That was one of the things that always bothered me, is how does he know about this unknown planet?
Right. Yeah.
And so that kind of got carried over, I guess, because nobody really related the two.
Yeah, that bothered me in the scripted version of the show, because when Koenig is talking to Bergman and he's saying about this, he says he looked it up on his charts.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, we just talked about the metaprobe, and this is like the second episode, and the planet's passing and everything. And now how would we have all this information about this planet that's so far away from Earth and have this information? And then also, how would he even said he checked with computer? It just
here it says chart room. The professor has located the position of Uralt. A section of the sky chart is projected on a screen. The assistant magnifies the picture, but there was no trace of a planet.
Yeah, it was.
I guess it's just, it sounds good on paper, and it got through so many people that nobody really said, gee, this doesn't make any sense. It's like the crazy edit that's in the episode where Koenig says, this is Triton's universe, then this is Triton's galaxy, and then this is Triton's star system. He's out of order.
Right.
And I think it's just because the cutting was done wrong.
Yeah, that
was always trying to be Kirk and try to get the probe to blow itself up like Kirk does with every computer he runs across in the original series.
The other thing that bothered me too is that they initially say after this halt, they come back from the first act, and then they're doing almost like a damage report, and then Morrow says that all but 4 of their Eagles are damaged, and he says we're defenseless. So what they do is they send up the Eagle with Alan and Donovan, and then that's the other thing too. Donovan's character, the character name is carried over as the pilot, the co-pilot from the original script. Now, as we all know, what happens is the Eagle hits the force field, and then Koenig's trying to tell Alan, he's almost begging him, put the Eagle on manual because you're not on automatic. And then what happens is it crashes back onto the moon. Mm-hmm. And then Morrow says to Koenig, well, Koenig says to Morrow that, have, the teams get ready, medical teams. And he says, we have no way to get to him. And he says, we'll walk. Well, originally they said that there were 4 Eagles, all but 4 Eagles were operational. So why can't they have an Eagle? And then the other thing is, instead of walking, why didn't they use moon buggies? That would have been, they're just...
they only have one moon buggy, and they have people out on the surface.
Right.
But it would have made sense if a moon buggy went with them.
Right.
Oh, you're going to put somebody on a stretcher, put them on a moon buggy. But
exactly.
It just, I guess, because it also gave them a chance to do something that looked visually interesting.
That's what I was going to say. The actual sequence, and that's really where the Vic Elms psychedelic prog rock takes off when they're walking on the surface.
Yeah.
But story-wise, it serves no purpose. They're running out there, and then basically nothing happens. But it's visually interesting. The whole crash sequence is visually interesting, as was the typing on the vertical keyboard. It looks really good, and it reminds you of the scene in A Matter of Life and Death when they're shooting from the stretcher. In the travel tube. It's just a film.
Also, when we saw this show on our old 480 tubes, we probably didn't notice that there were no markings on the keyboard.
Right. And I agree with you, Phil. I mean, and David, visually, it works. And it's very appealing, and it adds to the aesthetic of the episode. So, I mean, it's one of the saving graces, in fact. But it's just that it's little technicalities like that when you're watching it. And I even remember, even years ago, it was something that kind of like bothered me just because it just. But it is what it is.
Well, I can also imagine like they're still trying to emulate 2001, and you can't help but think about the moon sequence, with the music behind them as they approach the pit and the monolith when they're on their feet, when they're walking. It's just something they're really going for there, and failing miserably, but it's just cool. They were going for it.
Now, in answer to your question earlier, Roy, it says here at one point they ask the probe, what sort of information does your role require? And its response is everything. First, the data on computer tapes. Second, the contents of all the minds of all the personnel.
Oh, okay.
So its purpose is just collect data, whatever it is. And it collects data at all costs, doesn't care about life or not. And I think that probably got lost either in the edit or maybe was not in Eddie's script. I don't have the script. I used to have all of them. I wish I did.
Mm-hmm. Did the Ring Around the Room? Did the Ring Around the Moon script, David, get stolen by a fellow from Norway? And you sneak in like Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible?
No. Hey, Chris. Roy's heard the story before about how we used to have a lot of stuff and it then was all gone.
It's awful to hear
because you never knew who knew back then. Like we were talking earlier about the fact that there was a wasteland between the 80s and the early 90s where nobody cared about the show.
Just for the record, I wasn't one of those people. And just as you guys weren't either. But and it's so true though, because you couldn't find anything. And I was just talking about this not too long ago, where once the show stopped, and I remember Starlog number 6 when they announced the cancellation, there was a blurb in there that said you better get out there and get your model eagles while you can. Right. And it was true because everything just dried up. You could not find anything on this show. I mean, that's why your space report, David, and I mean, Phil was saying, we're not worthy. I
was trying to shoehorn anything into Starlog that I could. And every time I pitched something, I had to pitch something that would say, well, we have a different angle that would be worth putting into print, because I was also battling against anything Star Wars.
Right. Yeah.
Because once Jedi came out and we thought this is the last movie, that's it. It's over. It's game over.
Yeah. It's just it was a very frustrating time. And everything just it was dried up like a desert.
I will say during that era, I did go to the Hayden Planetarium in New York City, and the gift shop was selling the Roadstars little carded toy eagles.
Oh yeah,
little tiny Matchbox size eagles.
Hawks.
So yes, you had to go to the planetarium to get merch, but it was there.
Martin commented. He said, "It's just a plot point to isolate a character to get attacked." No, I mean in regards to what happened. Which
but the more you could be invested in the character, either they write a good new character like we talked about Zorif, or they have to use an existing character that you're already invested in. That you're going to wonder what's going to happen next. As they said, every commercial break has to have something that's going to make you come back after the commercial.
Right, it's the hook.
Yeah.
John The Hague said, I remember back in 1980, my dad got me a Mattel Koenig doll, so things hung around for a bit long, but not long.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there were places that you could find some of this stuff.
Sure.
I mean, it was there. I mean, obviously we didn't have the internet like we do today and everything. I mean, can you guys imagine if we had the internet and the access to all this stuff that, I mean, I know, not even saying that the materials that we have now, I mean, because of course we've talked about the merchandise and how it's been reinvented and everything, but just with the stuff that existed then, if we had access to it through the internet, I mean, it would have been.
But the funny thing was, the stuff that existed then is not as good as the stuff that has existed now.
True, very true.
I mean, you know, you can't compare a 1612 Eagle to a Dinky.
No, you can't.
But the Dinky is, you know, all things considered, it's unique because it was the first toy.
Yeah.
You know, I remember. I think I got my Dinky 2 months before the show premiered, because Bob Mandel at ITC called me at Starlog and said, I mean, I knew Bob Mandel, and he said, go down to FAO Schwartz in the city, and that's where they've got them.
Is that Abe's son, Bob?
Yes, Abe's son.
Yeah.
I did an interview with Peter Fernandez, and he's just said so many nice things. Said so many nice things about Bob. You know,
and how he worked with him on Thunderbirds 2086.
Yes, exactly. That was the connection I was talking to him about, and it was just lovely. You know, Peter was such a lovely person, and it was just such a nice thing. And at one point, he just looks at me and says, "You know more about this stuff than I do. Why are you asking me?"
Well, because like everybody else making the shows, Peter did his job and moved on to the next project.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Peter did a brilliant job on, you know, all his shows.
He did.
Dennis Chevalier said, I agree. Couldn't find a thing related to 1999 in Canada during that time. Jenny is saying, never stopped caring about Space 1999.
Yeah.
The Hague, John is saying, Starlog might not have existed. Well, and because he's making reference to the point about the internet. You know, I'll tell you though, it is true though. The internet has really affected publications on such a large scope.
Well, the sad thing was that the people who took over Starlog towards the end just didn't jump onto the internet as fast as they did, and that's where I think they lost ground.
Yeah.
I know somebody bought all the rights to it, but I don't think anything's been done with it.
Well, you can actually go on the internet, and there is an internet date site where they actually have the Starlog magazine.
Somebody said that they've been all pulled down. I haven't checked.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
kind of. But I know some of the guidebooks is still there. And John Zipper, who was one of the writers of Starlog, just published this.
Oh.
Essentially, I thought the book was going to be like an index, but what it really is, it's sort of like a history of the magazine, at least the first 200 issues. He interviewed Kerry O'Quinn on the birth of the magazine, and then he goes issue by issue to say, this is what appeared in it, this is who started at the magazine, this is who left at this point. So it's got my initial history in there. So,
very cool.
I'm looking forward to the next volume, which we'll have when I return.
Starlog magazine was such an integral part of just growing up. I mean, it was something that I look forward to. My friend Joe Metz, who's actually Ross Amico, my co-host, his cousin. That's how I got to know Ross. He actually had the first Starlog he had was issue number 2, which you can see in the background there. And when I went over his house, I saw that one. I saw number 3 with the Star Trek with the convention on the cover. I think the 4th one was with the $6 Million Man and the Bionic Woman. And I was like, where did you get this? This is like incredible. And he was just like saying, Ebner's Shoporama. He goes, you got to go there. He goes, it comes out like every 2 months. And then the very first Starlog I got was issue 12, which had CE3K on the cover with the mothership. And I remember my dad brought it home. And I was, you know, after working, and I was just like, oh, this is so cool. And immediately I'm like looking for Space 1999 stuff. But of course, you know, the show had been, so it was limited.
I was just able to access the Starlog on the Internet Archive. So it's there, I think. And I was able to like just.
You know, I downloaded everything. I went and downloaded PDFs of each issue. Number 3 was the Starlog where everyone's hanging from the chandelier at the convention. And then Space Art was 5, Destination Moon 6, and then 7 was our first Star Wars issue, and that's the one that I worked on with Jeff Mandel, who I don't know if you've seen it. Jeff is planning to do art prints of his Eagle
Oh.
blueprint because
The
he
Eagle
owned
Blue-
the copyright.
The Eagle Blueprints is in Starlog number 7.
Number 7, because that's how I got to work with Starlog, because they called Bob Mandel to ask if he knew anybody who knew enough about the Eagle to help Jeff with the blueprints, and Bob recommended me. So that's how I got my foot in the door at Starlog. And then after we finished it, they offered me a summer internship. And while I was there, Jeff and I pitched doing the Alpha Tech Notebook. So one thing led to the other. Yeah.
And David, you were talking about merch before. There was the underground merch that was produced and sold at the various science fiction conventions in the 1980s, mostly blueprints. I remember seeing blueprints. I started going to conventions in 1983. And I remember my first convention buying slides of UFO.
Yeah.
You know, they were selling actual film slides. I still have them, you know, but they also had like Eagle blueprints and stuff like that. Some fan produced, maybe they were copies of what was produced in Starlog. You know,
Starlog one got reproduced, and there was also a variation that was done by Japanese Starlog, which colorized it slightly, and then some people made changes to them. There was blueprints that Phil Ray did because he had the actual Eagles to work from.
And this is also the dark ages, quote unquote. This is the era of Fanderson and SIG. You know, I remember seeing SIG at comic book shops. You know, vastly overpriced, but just like an island, an oasis in the desert. You know.
Yeah, I contributed a lot of stuff to SIG. You know, it was a non-paying thing, but I did it because it kept stuff in print. And then Anderson started up around the time Jerry was doing Terrahawks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Alan. Thank you.
In regards to Starlog Japan, now, was that affiliated with the U.S. or?
It was licensed from us.
Okay.
I actually did. They actually commissioned me to do an article on the Supermarionation shows because I had at the time in my possession a lot of 2 1/4 transparencies because I was trying to do a book through Starlog at the time, and that was actually a really good job that I did for them. But eventually, nobody was interested in doing a book on Jerry or anything. So I think Fanderson ended up with all the transparencies through Phil Ray.
Gotcha.
So it would have fit right in with that series of books Starlog published, the visual guidebooks, I guess they were called, spaceships, special effects, you know, villains, all that. It would have fit. You could have dropped it right into that series of books. It would have been perfect.
Well, yeah. In fact, I had a book written that was never published, Sci-Fi Vehicles, and at that point they basically were not selling as well, the guidebooks, so they killed the project. And I was over in England interviewing the folks over at Space Models and had all kinds of stuff. We got access to all these photos of them building the skydiver models.
Oh, wow.
I met the guy who owned Foster's car.
Oh,
and
wow.
we took photos of the car. I did a whole interview with him, and the whole project never went through. I actually have a cover that they did to take to the trade shows. And at that time, I think B. Dalton, Barnes & Noble, and Brentano's were the big 3 book chains. And that's where they made their money. You know, if they bought enough books, it was great because that's where we sold them.
Walden Books, part of that?
Walden Books, yeah.
That's where I used to go.
I remember standing and we had a Walden Books when I lived in Phoenix. They had a Walden Books in the shopping mall across the street from where I lived. And I would just go there and stare at the Star Trek books with those painted covers, the tech manual. I remember
novels.
You didn't go down to the bookstore once a week to see what was out.
Yeah,
you go through it's like all the grand days of Tower Records and stuff.
Yeah,
where once a week you'd go in and you just start at A and work your way down to Z and just see, you know, what was there.
I didn't have money to buy anything. I just stood there, you know, and just you know, sucked it all in. You know,
I used
just
to
a great
buy
time.
the most esoteric things. We used to have a store here called Laserland, which started off as a Laserdisc store, but eventually went into DVDs. And every Tuesday, you'd look at the new releases, and they would buy everything. So you'd be staring at this thing, and all of a sudden you'd see this movie you haven't seen since you were 5 years old on the 2 a.m. CBS movie. And it's like, wow, I could finally see it without commercials. And you pick the stuff up, you know.
I remember finding the novelization to Moon 02 in like a used bookstore, and I thought it was like the Ark of the Covenant, that I had found like this great thing.
Every movie.
Hey, David, do you still have that book that you were trying to publish?
The vehicles?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have all the notes here. I don't have a lot of the graphics, because a lot of the graphics either came from the Starlog archive, or in the case of the stuff from Space Models, I sent it back to them.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Because I didn't want to sit on it. The only thing I have is all the photos I took of Paul Foster's car.
Wow. I mean, what a treasure, though. It's a shame that book didn't make it to life.
It could still be done, because some of the photo material has come out. I actually have some copies of the skydiver photos.
Because I'm sure there would be an interest for that. I mean, UFO is still highly revered as well.
Yeah, but you got to remember too that the thing with the guidebooks was this was pre-internet, so these little blurbs don't tell you enough.
That's true.
It was a lot simpler to say, okay, I remember that there was this movie that was made in France and it was called this, and I could write this little blurb and just put it in the thing. And if we had a picture, it was great. But I didn't have to see the movie because I didn't have to go into detail. Now people would want detail.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and I remember the Starlog put out, what was it? And I think Phil was talking about this. There was the villains. It was the spaceships. The spaceships one. Yeah. I was excited because you had you could see.
Well, the villains and heroes was an attempt to do cheaper books on lighter subjects that wouldn't do a full book. I think they also did the Star Wars collectibles with Stephen Sansweet in the same format. It wasn't perfect bound, because I think the only one that they spent money on was Space Ark, because that was a pet project of Kerry O'Quinn, and he did the slipcase version to make it look really fancy.
That was a good book. I love that.
It was because it was a subject matter that most people didn't have gathered together, and I think that was due to the response they got on issue 5, where they did some Space Ark.
Yeah.
Because a lot of stuff in Starlog was pet projects that we all wanted to do. I just happened to mention one day that I was collecting, space stamps. There used to be a little stamp dealer in this small store where I lived, and I'd go in there. I'd get a little pack of like Russian space stamps, and everyone's like, "Oh, this is a cool idea!" And I brought them in, they photographed them, and we did a 3-page photo spread of space stamps.
Well, those earlier issues were amazing because there was so much creativity that was flowing through them. I mean, as it progressed and it got, if you look at the last, let's say 50 Starlogs that were, came out as opposed to the first 50, I mean, a huge difference.
Because it went from writing about stuff we loved to writing about stuff we had to write about.
Yeah.
Because once the magazine was established and we knew enough publicists, they would come to us with projects to promote. And, it was great that we would get Star Wars story for the issue, but then we'd have to do something like Heartbeeps.
Right.
And that was
my goodness,
the issues that they were so upset about because the movie tanked and the issue didn't sell.
Yeah. See, I used to buy the Starlogs just because I was collecting them, but there were issues like that. It was like, I'm with you.
There were always people who bought because, we were a newsstand magazine.
Yeah.
It wasn't just subscription. It was newsstand.
That's where I got them.
And and we had to fight with our distributor tooth and nail to get them to understand we want the back issues in mint condition.
Yep.
Do not send us the torn covers, which is what most publishers did. When they wanted to get rid of magazines or book, they'd rip the cover off, send it back, and they'd get credit for that on their next purchase.
Because they didn't sell.
We wanted the issues back because we'd sell them as back issues.
Right. Yeah.
So, that was a new market. There weren't too many magazines that did back issues.
And that's why I was able to get like the issue number 1, issue number 2, because my original copies, I missed it on the first run. And then trying to get it, through the back issues, because you'd go and they would charge a little bit more. They were a couple bucks more for the back issues.
Yeah, well, as the stock dwindled, the price would of course go up. And that was my job at Starlog initially, was I ran the mail order department. So I was the guy who fulfilled all the mail orders until, I got bumped up to, contributing the associate editor. But I originally was doing all the mail order stuff, always trying to figure out how we could mail those Star Trek pendants we were selling with the T-shirts, because I'd wrap them up inside the T-shirts, because people would say they came crushed, or in the case of Canada, they would be missing from the package when they got there.
Alan Russell commented, he said, here in the UK, we had to get Starlog from Sci-Fi shops. I always got it in Forbidden Planet. It wasn't in the general UK distribution.
Yeah. There was this lovely couple. I have a photo of them, and I've asked people before who they were. I cannot remember their names, which unfortunately, they owned a Sci-Fi shop just outside of London. And on one of my trips to London, they loaded me up with every single Doctor Who novelization that was available. They just gave it to me. Well, I had to explain to customs why I had a suitcase full of books. Because the Doctor Who's weren't airing in the United States, and I had to know what the Doctor Who show was about to write it for Starlog.
Right.
So I had to read all the novels, which were great, because they were great novels to read while you're commuting.
Oh yeah, you could. Yeah, they were like what? They were like 120 pages, and that was it, or less.
Yeah, most of them were very light reading, and unless you read the David Whitaker novels, and they were very involved.
What was his name? Terrence.
Terrence Dix.
Yeah, Terrence Dix. Yeah,
Terrence Dix wrote most of the adaptions, and he had this very breezy, writing style, which was great. It was a nice little sit-down read for a 2-hour commute.
There was a comic book store in Port Jeff, Long Island. I forgot the name of it. It was right by the ferry terminal, and I would go in there and buy comics and whatever. And I went in one day, and the guy who worked there spent half of his time. He told the owner that I just spent the last 3 hours arranging the Doctor Who novelizations in order of airing.
Yeah, because they didn't publish them that way. They numbered them for some strange reason. That drove me crazy. It was like, which episode came first?
I just remember the owner rolling her eyes. It was like, am I paying this guy?
Martin commented, he said GoldenEye and Dark, was the bookstore. He was trying to think of the bookstores that they were at. Do you guys remember Omni magazine? He also commented about that.
Oh yes, Omni caused us nothing but trouble. When we did Future Life.
Yeah.
I bet.
The original title, there was a whole lawsuit because Omni, it was Future, or we called it the Magazine of the Future or something like that. And Omni just came down us like a ton of bricks before it got published, and we had to change the title.
Wow.
Wow. It was a stupid lawsuit because it had nothing to do with what Omni did.
Omni published some great original fiction, though. I think Omni first published Octavia Butler. It was Ellen Datlow was the editor over there. Just amazing stuff.
Oh yeah,
I love that picture.
Weren't we talking about this episode originally? Somehow we got off on this.
Yeah,
anything to avoid the pain of Ring Around the Moon.
Anything of the pain of talking about Vic Elms.
But no, in regards to one of the other things too. I mean, this episode definitely took liberties, but from a visual standpoint, though, it was appealing.
Well, that was the real great thing about the first series was that between the production time and everything, the directors were able to, take episodes that might have not been terribly exciting and really dress them up with stunning camera work and visuals. I mean, that's the one thing that I think this was the first episode where they spent a lot of time trying to do camera tricks.
Yeah, and it really, the story was definitely weak in a lot of areas, but in regards to the visuals, I think it really worked very well.
The shot there of Helena with the light behind her, and she's on
and her face is so, you can see her face so well in the visor. It's really amazing piece of filming.
That little trolley pad to move her like she's floating.
Mm-hmm.
It's these wonderful little tricks, and it just shows you just how you could take something that may be a little mundane and just make it look interesting from that standpoint.
And I think that was Jerry's whole point when the show premiered, because Star Trek was so popular in syndication. A lot of the fans missed the point of it. And the point of it was this Space 1999, it's drawing its inspiration from Kubrick's 2001. It's not a Federation where it's basically, we're at the mercy of a hostile universe trying to figure out our place in it.
Well, that was the original premise, was that the humans were the invaders in space.
Yeah.
So space was dark. It was mysterious. They had no control over their destiny. So there were a lot of interesting things. Yeah, I mean, in the greater scheme of the initial episodes produced, it was a bit of a lightweight plot wise. The funny thing too is that the episode before Matter of Life and Death, Johnny Byrne got really metaphysical with Art Wallace's script, and in a case, there's a lot of things about that episode that you could say, well, gee, yeah, it's a little weird. Doesn't
it's
make
like
much
Solaris.
sense. That's exactly what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
You go back to the Art Wallace's script is a little Solaris, a little The Thing.
Yeah. Now I talked to I forgot the actor's name just now. I talked to the guy who played Lee Russell.
Richard Johnson.
Because he had done the Italian horror movies, and he was a guest at Chiller Theater. And I brought all the laser discs and Space 1999 stuff for him to sign and everything. And it was a very nice man. And I'm talking with him, and he looks me in the eye. He was sitting at the table. This is back when I was able to kneel, before my knees got blown out.
Oh yeah.
And I'm kneeling in front of him, talking with him, and he looks me in the eye and says, "What the hell was this episode about? What the?"
Yeah.
It's kind of hilarious. And I said what I just said now. It's Solaris. It's their impression of Solaris.
Yeah, it's like in Collision Course. Margaret Leighton had absolutely no idea what she was saying. It was just say the line. Just say the lines. It sounds good. Say the lines.
So David,
I cannot believe that he was actually a Chiller, Phil, and I missed him. I know.
I've never grown tired of reminding you of that too.
Yeah, and he since so many actors and artists have passed away from the series because of the time that's gone by, and he's unfortunately, sadly, he's one of them.
Yeah. But David, this
very
Ring,
stage actor too.
If you discount the voice of God in Black Sun, the Tritons are the first aliens the Alphans encounter. Am I right? According to production order.
Yep.
So
we now know that the voice of the Triton probe was Prentice Hancock.
Yes.
We knew that already.
He was available.
Yeah, that always kind of bothered
like
me.
Jimmy Doohan voicing the Klingons in the motion picture, Star Trek motion picture.
Yeah,
it's great.
No, he got double duty. He deserved it. But
David, did he get paid to do that? Did he get like a pay bump at least, or did he just did it?
Who knows?
Oh,
yeah.
They didn't pay those
probably was. He just happened to be in the dubbing booth when they needed somebody.
Yeah.
One of the things that always makes me smile too about this episode is there's that one scene where Koenig approaches Carter and he puts his commlock onto the desk, and it's got his picture just laid out, and where you just see it, and then it goes blurry, and then they focus in, and it's a great shot
because they start out on it and then they go back to it at the end of the shot, even though it's a weird picture.
Yeah, and the commlock never has that picture like that ever again. Or and even if you look at Koenig's commlock later in the episode or even beforehand, it was never like that.
Yeah,
that's because, Roy, you're looking at the episode through the eyes of Triton.
well, either that or it's one of those prismatic pictures where you turn the commlock sideways, the picture goes sideways. Just like your phone. You turn it this way, you turn it this way, the picture stays the same way. So.
Okay.
That's our story, and we're sticking to it.
Okay.
Phil, shall we talk about Vic Elms?
No, wait. We're getting there. We're getting there.
I love it. I love it. Well,
I know I'm in the COVID fog, but you guys are trying to pull that one over on me with the turning of the commlock. Before we get to Vic Elms, Here's another.
Fasten your seatbelts, boys and girls.
Yes.
Now, David, I want to ask you.
Yeah.
Is this the 11-inch eagle in any of these shots, or no?
It could, the one
The second
over
or the third
moon
shot?
the middle one, yeah, those two it could be because they use the 11-inch for a lot of long shots.
Okay,
But the eagle never gets too big. It's usually the 11-inch eagle.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah,
Which
but
you
definitely not one on the left.
Right? Yeah, not this one.
Yeah, that's
I
probably.
can't look at that picture on the left without hearing that sound effect.
Yeah, yeah, the one on the left's definitely the. I can't.
22.
I think it's the 22. I don't see the V brace.
Okay.
On the leg.
Yeah. Yeah, we're really getting picky here.
Yeah, I'd have to go and look at the images.
I told you this is a brilliant episode that this you could teach college courses on this episode.
And then here's the moonwalk that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah,
I love it.
And then of course when Dr. Russell comes back, because they find out that she's back, and then when she's being probed in person, when she's on the probe.
Oh, say that again, Roy. Say that again. What was she doing?
She was being
probe us
probed.
again, Roy. Probe us again.
And then it's getting late.
Oh, actually, yeah.
And then the last shot I've got is from behind the scenes, which I think is really a kind of cool shot.
Yeah, that's probably what they use to create the blinding light right behind her.
Right.
I'm not sure. Either that or was just to make all the Willy Whirly gig stuff inside Triton. I'm trying to.
Is that the outfit she wore in War Games, David?
Yeah, they just used the same outfit again.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm trying to find the picture of the
So the Tritons are actually the aliens of War Games. There. Stop the presses.
No, either that or the aliens in War Games use the same costume company.
Okay.
Or
that was the 22-inch eagle being hit by the.
It was the 22.
Yeah, I'm looking at the picture now. It's definitely a 22.
Yeah, I had a feeling. Or they probed her mind because it was all in their minds anyway, and they recalled that image of what she had when she had the encounter with the Tritons, and that's why she was wearing that.
Exactly.
Yeah, nice save, Roy.
Thank you. I had to get us back on point.
Anything away.
This episode is a plague of fear.
That's War Games. Now, in regards to before we go to who directed this episode, I know
so much fun.
We're gonna go right in here, Phil. So tell us all about Vic Elms.
First of all, I just want to thank Dave for taking part of his valuable weekend to spend time talking about this. This is the most fun I've had in a long time, and I've had a lot of fun. So this is just great. But Vic Elms, of course, is the guitarist, I believe, of the band Christie. He had a minor hit, Yellow River, a couple of other minor things. He didn't know how to read music, so when he was brought in to score this, well, he was the and David, any place I make a mistake, correct me because I want it to be right.
Sure.
So I'm going on memory here.
Yeah.
He was the boyfriend of Sylvia Anderson's daughter.
Yes.
Right.
And they were married.
They were married, yeah.
Oh, they were I didn't realize. Okay. So he was brought in to score this, but I think the thing that burns me is that Barry Gray had this long relationship working for the Andersons since before, this was 1958 or whatever it was. And they must have not really understood what a composer does because they just brought this guy in saying, well, he's a musician, so he can score an episode too. It'll be easy for him.
Well, Barry
had
moved to the island of Guernsey off the coast of France, I think just around the time of UFO. And Vic had done the main title for a pilot the Andersons did in early '73 called The Investigator, which was another attempt to combine puppetry and live action. So he just did he was just contracted to the main theme because they were just going to use the tracking music from an episode of The Protectors for the underscore. So I think they thought, well, Vic can do Space 1999 because they had in their mind they wanted a kind of a rock score. Once it became this big multi-million-dollar series, and the wisdom changed to it's going to be orchestral. They knew that Vic wasn't able to do it. So
see, I always assumed Barry split because they brought Vic in.
No.
Okay, because that was because it seemed to me like, based on my experiences working with people who supervised me, who didn't understand what I did for a living back in the day, that they were just discounting what a true composer and a musician does.
It's entirely true that probably may have happened, because who knows, all of Barry's scoring was done at outside studios or his home studio. He never really did anything at their studios. So whether Jerry had any experience with it, I don't know. But I think they kind of assumed that Vic could handle it. And once they found out he couldn't, they kind of saddled Barry with him. And
Vic was no Danny Elfman.
No.
No, you know what I heard too?
Danny learned how to do it.
Yeah.
The story that I heard about Danny was he went to London to record the score for Batman. And the first day in the studio, they start playing the music, and he's like flabbergasted because nothing sounds like he expected it to sound. Because he didn't understand orchestration. And he eventually forced himself to learn. Vic had the idea that if he just gets up and plays a tune, the rest of the orchestra is going to pick up on it and play along with it.
Yeah,
kind of like the Beatles, right? Yeah.
With this, though, in fact, Jamie Anderson talked about this specific scenario on his podcast, and he had explained, because I guess now they were going to be doing this. I guess the date for this was May 6th of 74. He actually was all set in his own way to come in, as you were saying, David, to do this. And instead of having all of these, notes full of preparation and everything to give out to an orchestra, he had like 3 or 4 pages of notes.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't going to work. And I guess the orchestra was incensed. And what happened was Alan Willis, I guess, came to the rescue.
Yeah. Alan was the music editor. But no, what happened was the orchestra walked out.
Yeah.
They weren't going to do it because, people who are unfamiliar with film and TV orchestras, these guys are like the best at reading on site. They don't see music and practice at home before they get into the studio. They get there and they play.
Right. And
sometimes it might take 2 or 3 takes before they get it right. Something more complex may be 5 or 6 takes. But most of these guys in up to 3 takes, and it's down and it's finished. And they move on to the next. They weren't going to work this way. So what ended up happening was Alan Willis got a few select people, percussionists, whatever, and they just went into the studio and they put this thing together.
Yeah. Can you imagine how incensed?
Is it true? Is it true also because they balked at it because Vic wasn't in the musicians union? Was that true?
That I did hear. I just that nobody was going to work his way.
Yeah.
We weren't used to it. So Alan basically took over and he just got this small little group together and they did this. And it really is a good score. For this episode, it works really well.
He saved
whatever reason, they just didn't use it again, any part of it. And it was the Moonwalk was the only track that got onto the album because RC loved it because it was disco-y.
Right.
And it works. It's great. But sometimes stuff that's more ambient than melodic works really well, and that's what this episode was really required. That's why later episodes like Force of Life worked with all that great ambient electronic music.
Yeah.
Amazing stuff. And you also have to not discount that Alan Willis was drawing on Barry Gray's back catalog. I'm assuming Barry was paid for that. I'm hoping that they drew music from Stingray or Four Feather Falls or Captain Scarlet, whatever, to make the whole first series have a similar sound to it. So a lot of it was Barry Gray from the Superman Nation shows, and it works fantastic.
Because all the shows at the time, you only scored a certain number of episodes, and the rest were all tracked. I mean, that was the norm. So Barry would be using stuff right back to Four Feather Falls sometimes, but mostly Supercar because of the publishing rights. I think Four Feather Falls was a different publishing company, but they managed to slip a few things through. But it was just very common. So he was able to use a lot of stuff.
To great effect, by the way. Really works. It holds up beautifully. But this is an aberration that sticks out. I think it sticks out in a good way. I love the story about Vic. I assumed there was a falling out with Barry and the Andersons, so I'm glad that was cleared up. He was just ready to retire then, right?
It wasn't a falling out per se, but once Barry finished what he was doing, he was back in Guernsey, and he didn't hear anything about Series 2, and I think that was simply because they were just looking for less expensive and different sounds, because essentially Jerry put, he went and just turned over everything to Fred Freiberger because that's what the Americans wanted, and it gave him the only reason to do Series 2.
Yeah.
And Derek Wadsworth was involved with The Day After Tomorrow too.
Yeah, because again, Derek Wadsworth was the second choice on Day After Tomorrow.
Oh, he was.
Jerry contacted a company called Panache Music to provide music for Day After Tomorrow. And originally, they sent in a guy named Steve Coe who provided an electronic score. And some of Steve Coe's music does remain in the show. But they realized that they needed something a little bit more bombastic. So Derek was hired, and Derek, I think, just did one session, and he just did variations on his theme for it. And based on that, he got Space 99 Year 2 because they listened to that and said, well, this is what we want. We want something less orchestral, more
jazzy.
Yeah. Or, hip.
Yeah.
And I love Derek. He was a terrific guy. But, over the years, I've become to appreciate what they've done in the first series musically more than just rehashing the same 5 scores.
It's two different animals. I mean, you can look at Wadsworth, as just a terrific jazz musician, and I think Year 2, from his point of view, works great. I think Wadsworth was a great sport, and he loved talking about it.
Derek's great strength was that he didn't look at a show from, I have to have an established theme and work from that. Barry was very good at coming up with a main theme for a show and making variations. I mean, UFO is almost all this variations of the same theme all throughout it. Derek, with the exception of the opening credit sequence of Metamorph, never used the main title again in the underscore. And every underscore piece is like every episode is a unique score and a unique styling until he gets to Space Warp, which is the first time he really heavily uses, electronic instrumentation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was very surprised to see or listen to because listening to the Year 2 theme, he put a lot of different type of music. He did a lot of music for the Tabor, which again is not it's not a fan favorite, at least personally for me, but the music is really done very well in that episode.
Yeah. Well, it gave him an opportunity to write different kind of music.
Yeah.
Which ends up, a lot of the Tabor stuff gets used in any of the character moments.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's recycled. So
it just shows you how universal music can be in an underscore. In itself, it's an art. No composer, all the composers that I've interviewed have never been able to say to me exactly how they look at a picture and they come up with this thematic piece that works with it. It's like I used to say, it's like the only real magic that exists, because a magician could tell you how he does his trick,
right?
But composers almost can never tell you how they do their trick.
Interesting.
They can tell you how they approach it, how it emotionally affects them, but how they get that from, what they see to what you hear is remarkable.
And I have to say, the music that Derek Wadsworth did for Year 2, I very, very much enjoyed. And there's a lot of beautiful pieces that are out there. but it's like night and day though between his music and then what was used for series 1 with Barry's music. But and it's almost, there's been a lot of experimentation. Chris Paulson actually put up a little while ago too, and I didn't get to post a comment, but he said, have you seen the fan edits? If you go onto YouTube, somebody's taken the opportunity to fan edit and edit the episodes down. They've taken out some of the scenes that maybe, make things appear a little silly. They've altered the titles, but they've also taken year 1 openings and put them with the year 2 episodes. And it was very creative, and they've done a good job with that. And then also, changing some of the music. In fact, there was on the release Blu-ray, there was there was a project that was done where they did that with Seed of Destruction.
Yeah. But we kind of did that first with Cosmic Princess, because we didn't have the rights to track additional music of Derek's because of there was a publishing change between year 1 and 2. So Bob Mandel used Barry's music. So you get to hear Barry's music with Derek's music, and it's really jarring how it changes the whole feeling. I mean,
they're definitely coming from 2 different places.
Yeah.
Barry has such a recognizable aura around his music. I think of him as the English John Williams. It's great.
Yeah. I'm actually excited because the Japanese a cappella group that I work with, Bukamisha, we're doing a Thunderbirds album.
Oh,
so it's all going to be a cappella. That's coming out soon.
Wow.
They're going to do the Thunderbirds March a cappella?
Yep.
Like the Swingle Singers?
Yep.
I got to hear that.
When is that going to be coming out, David?
I don't know yet. I know we're working on it because I just provided them with notes and some graphics. But in March, BSX Records, who publishes Bukamisha here in the United States, will be doing Joe Kramer's music for the Big Finish audio book series of Space Iconic.
Yeah, you were talking about that. That's going to be something.
We're doing that. I'm actually working, trying to set up an interview with Joe this week for it.
Excellent.
Because
when this a cappella album drops, David, you got to get in touch with me, and I'll totally play it. And I'd love to have you or whoever on to talk about it.
I'll send you the Godzilla stuff we've done.
Yeah. I think you may have already. You've been sending me Godzilla stuff for forever. I love it. Thank you so much.
I don't think I have had a chance to send you a physical copy.
Cool.
Yeah.
So what's the bottom line on Vic Elms? I mean, is he a victim of circumstances? Was he in the right place at the wrong place at the wrong time?
How does it work for him? Right place at the right time, because if you look him up on Internet Movie Database, he's only ever scored 1 movie. A picture called The Ups and Downs of a Handyman.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it's exactly what you're thinking. It's true. It's a typical British sex romp. Comedy, like the Carry-Ons. But outside of The Investigator and Space 1999, he's mostly just done what he's done, which was, his rock and pop stuff, because that's what he was able to do.
I heard years ago.
He was put into a situation, though. Oh, I was just going to say real quickly. He was put into a situation because of family, and it was almost like it would not, if it was on a professional note, it would not have happened, but it happened because of his affiliation.
No, but we know a lot of. I'm sure Phil will agree. We know a lot of musical people who could sit down at a piano or a guitar and play you the most beautiful melody, and it's all in their head, and there's no way they could put it down on paper.
I got this dude in New Jersey who plays a 7-string violin who will set your hair on fire. That's how great he is. He's just an amazing guy.
We used to talk about what we referred to as the Hummers of Hollywood. All these composers out there who would just hum a note and have other people transcribe it. I mean, when synthesizers took over in the early 80s, especially in a lot of B movies, a lot of these guys would just sit down at the synthesizer and play. They had nothing written down, orchestrated or anything, and they just say, "Oh, I got it. That's going to work. Great." Yeah, Robin Asquith. Yeah, did all those.
It reminds me of Roberta Lay with Torchy whistling into the tape recorder and sending it to Barry Gray and Barry transcribing it. Like she just whistled. Barry did all the hard work. He did the heavy lifting, and she whistled into a tape recorder.
But this was, this was not something unusual. That people would do this, but to depend on somebody like this to do an entire TV series, it was easy enough for Roberta Lee and her co-writer to do Torchy and Twizzle that way.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's a lot of other shows that were done that way too. But when you have like a 40-piece orchestra, they're not. I mean, we could get a jazz ensemble and they'll do it, but
that story of Vic with the orchestra and Alan taking over reminds me so much of the story of Deep Purple when they did the orchestral album, the Deep Purple orchestral album. And I read something about, because I had interviewed Candace, Richie's wife. So Richie was talking about the experience, and he was like, the musicians who were accompanying Deep Purple for that album resented them. And he said, I can't blame them. These guys have spent their whole lives learning to perfect the violin or the string bass or whatever. And here we are, a bunch of kids coming in. Some of us don't even read music, and now they're accompanying us like we're the stars and they're not.
Yeah.
That was Richie's, more mature take on it, like 20, 30 years down the road. But I feel like, when Vic came into that recording session, he, in my mind, trying to connect everything, I was thinking he was thinking of that Deep Purple album, how they did that, you know.
Yeah.
And there was a long tendency in the 60s and into the 70s to combine rock and roll bands like Caravan or Renaissance or whoever with an orchestra, and they did it with various levels of greatness. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Like the Deep Purple album, I think is a good album. The Caravan album, where they take all their music.
I love the LSO version of Tommy.
Yeah.
That was great, and it's a shame that apparently the master tapes are lost.
But it's astonishing to sit down and hear some of this stuff. Even something like Video Games Live. Yeah. You go to a Video Games Live concert and hear the video game music orchestrated. It's just astonishing. Yes, ELO, the Hague has mentioned the ELO, but ELO would take their string players and just overdub them like 50 times in the studio.
Yeah.
It wasn't until later that Lewis Clark got involved. And Queen, absolutely, yeah. Sorry, I'm reading the comments.
Wayne's War of the Worlds.
I tell you, that War of the Worlds album, I never liked the disco beat to it, but I've come to love it. I think I love the voiceover.
D. Anderson. Yeah, Warren's right, D. Anderson. Yeah, I mean, I absolutely. I mean, I listen to War of the Worlds at least once a year. It's just one of my favorites, and it's nice that they redid it with Liam Neeson. So now I've got another variation.
Have you gotten to see the live concert?
Yes, I've got it on video.
Oh my God, how is it?
It is beautiful. I'll send you a link to it.
When was that?
They have been doing live stage concerts in England, all throughout England. Okay. Originally, they started off doing a CG projection of a young Richard Burton narrating it, like a head floating above the orchestra.
Wow.
And eventually, they've changed it to Liam Neeson.
Okay.
We did it because the one thing that was really interesting when they first started doing it was some of the songs that kind of didn't work with either the singers or whatever on the original album suddenly worked better because they had better singers and they orchestrated them better. So when they did the Liam Neeson version, they did that version. They have different lyrics because some stuff was cut for time or basically how things were mixed. There was at one point this multi-disc box set that they put out, which I spent a fortune on. I bought it on iTunes when it was available. It's no longer available. And I think it was like almost $100 on iTunes. Wow. So you can imagine a digital. So you can imagine what the actual box set costs.
Sure.
Wow.
And it's got every variation of the songs. It's got different mixes, different pieces. It's got narrations by Kurt Jürgens, did the German narration.
Yep.
So they got segments of him, all the different narrators that they did in different
That's
languages.
crazy awesome.
Yeah.
It is.
So,
Ooh la.
yeah. Oh, and all these like dance variations of the ula.
That's awesome.
So guys, just gonna start to wind down. So
we're not done. The eyes of Triton.
Yeah.
Some of us are losing our voice.
It's the eyes of
my goal is to go longer than Nick Tate.
No, we're not breaking any records tonight, guys. I love you guys, but
Roy's going to be passed out on the floor. His feet are going to be up in the air, and me and Dave will still be talking.
We are honored that he's lasted this long. It just
I appreciate this so much. And when you told me David was coming on, I was so happy because any opportunity to speak with him and just bang heads, it's just a great honor.
He had a great time on your show. I'm looking forward to doing it again.
You know what you need to do, Dave, is anytime you have anything going on, you just send me a message and say, "Can I come on?" And I'll say yes.
Yeah.
Here's the date. That's all you got to do. Don't wait for me to contact you because I get distracted by shiny things.
Hey, Chris Trice is joining us. Chris, welcome.
I
said Richard Burton was tired and emotional when he turned up for the recording.
There are takes like that on the box set where he's like talking it out. He's like, "Oh, let me try this again." You could tell he's just really burning him out.
Yeah.
When after the War of the Worlds starts, and then he says his first words as narrator, "What's left of my hair." Yeah. Still, after all these years, stands up on the back of my neck. It is electrifying. It's brilliant.
And every time I see one of the the other movies where somebody else does the narration, I'm like going, it's not as good. Even poor, was it Cedric Hardwicke who did the George Powell one? It's like, it's okay. He's reading it okay, but you read the book now, and then all you hear is Richard Burton doing the narration.
Yes.
Or Liam Neeson, if you prefer, because Liam Neeson.
I have not heard the Liam Neeson version.
Oh, I'll send that to you. It's great.
Right. I love playing that stuff at Halloween. It's awesome to play at Halloween. It's just great.
It's appropriate. So, guys, last minute comments in regards to the eyes of Triton.
I think it's time that David Hirsch came forward and revealed that he is Petter Ogland from Norway. That he's been writing these tremendous emails from Norway, these gigantic, massive emails, and this is the greatest scam in the history of the internet. He's totally Andy Kaufman, Space 1999 fandom. Is it true, David? Are you him?
If I was masquerading as anybody, I would love to be masquerading as Phil Ray because they probably still have all the models.
Yeah.
All right. So we're gonna wind down. A new segment that I have on this show is it's called That's the Way It Was, and this is a tribute to actually Walter Cronkite. As we know, when he would sign off back in the day, he would say, "That's the way it was." Saturday, December 3rd, 1980. So anyway, with that, we've been doing this the last several weeks. On this date, now, interesting enough, I've looked back. There's now Space 1999, as we know, was syndicated. However, in regards to this specific episode of Space 1999, Ring Around the Moon, it actually was televised on WPIX New York, which myself, David, and Phil would. Well, Phil, you watched it in Phoenix, though, right? When you first started watching it?
It was difficult. I didn't really plow through the entire thing until I got a copy of the Laserdisc completely, but I would catch it here and there. And I don't remember seeing Ring first run.
Okay.
But I remember a lot of the episodes. That was one of the ones I don't remember seeing. My parents, I could have been out of the house. I could have been on a trip or something. So yeah. So It was something I saw on videotape, not on broadcast.
Gotcha. But this date that it originally showed was April 3rd, 1976. Now, this can be authenticated because this is actually, and this is a plug for David and Bob's book, is they actually had the journals and the logs from Martin Landau, because what Martin Landau would do is he would write down the dates that the episodes would be televised, and he would even indicate if it was shown once or if it was repeated. So this episode actually was shown for the very first time in the New York area on WPIX on April 3rd, 1976. So that's the date that I chose to go with for doing That's the Way It Was. So some accomplishments that took place on that day, if you're a hockey fan, Philadelphia Flyers, they won their record-tying 28th straight NHL home game that time.
Never heard of those guys.
Yeah. And then also the 21st Eurovision Song Contest, Brotherhood of Man for the UK, wins the singing, and it was for Save Your Kisses for Me in the Hague. So that was something that was noted. And then as far as songs in the US that were number one at that time, Disco Lady by Johnny Taylor. And then speaking of the Brotherhood of Man, Save Your Kisses for Me. So that all took place on that date in April 3rd, 1976. And then the other thing, which I just thought, and this true story, and I came across this, and when I recognized the date, I thought how appropriate. So to say, instead of that's the way it was, that's the way it will be, because that was the premiere date when I actually started doing the show, but it was in 2020. So fast forward almost 44 years later, which is mind-boggling to think that it's that much time has gone by. So, and that's the date of the first show. And then also, which is kind of close, as we were saying, Phil, when he was on with me, we were talking about the One Step Beyond, which was called Alcoa Presents. And the episode we were talking about was The Promise. And the original air date for that was November 29th, 1960, which was literally only a few days ago, 62 years ago. And that's the episode that had starred William Shatner in it. So a lot of connections. Everything kind of like ties in.
We're looking at the other side of the tapestry here. We're looking at all the stitches. It's all coming together.
Seriously.
You have to flip it over and see the actual image, you know.
Anyway, so I'm going to go to the shout outs. Warren actually commented he's not going to be able to. I was going to try to have Warren on just for a bit, but I'm just going to give a plug, and I'll do that towards the end just in case he makes it. Mm-hmm. But I want to give a plug to our friends at Sci-Fi Distilled, Mike and Mary Beth. They talk about science fiction TV and movies of the 80s, 90s, and beyond. And they are on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And they are going to be on this, which is December 8th, this coming Wednesday. Now, they're going to be talking about a movie that Phil had brought to actually. No, wait a minute. I'm getting the story straight. Phil, did they bring that to your attention, or did you bring it to their attention?
5/25/77 was the movie that I've been waiting to be released for years, decades.
Yep.
And it hasn't been released. And just for some reason, I did like a little search for it, and I saw that it was being released onto DVD, Blu-ray.
Yep.
So I immediately ordered it because I've always wanted to see it based on the trailer. And it's the original trailer, not the current trailers. They don't have the rights to use the music anymore for the original trailers they did 10, 15 years ago. So I said to Mary Beth, I can't wait. I finally get to see this movie. And Mary Beth said, what's that? And I sent her the trailer, and she was like, oh my God, I have to see this. This is incredible. And it's basically the story of someone who's reading Starlog, an American cinematographer, and he wants to meet don't get old, folks. The special effects artist, Douglas Trumbull. He wanted to meet Trumbull. So he goes out there. It's a whole story. It's a coming of age sort of thing. It's like, it has like the Breakfast Club vibe to it, where these kids are growing up, sort of thing. But yeah, it's really touching. It took forever to be released. And if you watch it on DVD or Blu-ray, listen to the commentary. The commentary is very informative.
Yeah,
I guess he was the only person who saw Star Wars before it was released. The rough cut
which is incredible. And this was written and directed by Patrick Red Johnson, I guess is his name. And
Patrick Red Johnson, yeah.
And then Fred Roos and Gary Kurtz, who is known for involved with, I believe, Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, and he goes and he meets there's a scene where he meets Dykstra and Greg Jean and all these people working on Close Encounters and Star Wars and Spielberg. They do like a thing with Spielberg, and it's crazy, but it's like, does he leave his small hometown in Illinois and go to Hollywood? What does he do? And that was basically the whole story.
I started watching this movie in the middle of the night last night. I got about halfway through, and let me tell you something. It brings back a lot of memories, because myself, Ross's cousin Joe, who we were all, very close friends and everything back in the day. And probably around 1980, we started doing it. This is what we would do at Summers. We would, make Super 8 films. We would edit them. We would make these special effects. We'd use the splicing tape. We'd have scripts set up. We would try to make sure everything was set. Watching this film really brought back a lot of memories. Now, there was a film that was out not too long ago, a couple of years, not too long ago. It's probably about 5-6 years now. But I think it was called Super 8. But this film really hits home on more of a passionate level, I felt. And I haven't even watched the whole thing. So anyway, real quick, Mike and Mary Beth are going to be talking about this film. It'll be next on Wednesday. So if you have the opportunity,
especially if you're from the 70s, see the film. You'll find something to love about this. It's not the perfect film, but I think it will really pull your heartstrings.
It will. It'll definitely do that. So definitely check it out, and then check out the discussion, and that'll be on Wednesday. I also want to give a shout out to the Country Gate Players. My friend Bill Scarrato, who owns the theater, actually, as we know, COVID has actually put a lot of things on hold. It's been very rough in regards to things going on with theaters across, the world. And Country Gate had a tough year in regards to it. The last main show that they did was back in March. And then there's been different fundraising shows that have been going on. Bill did a film series, a film noir series that was taking place in July. And then also we just did Plan 9 from Outer Space, The Experience, which was in October, which was a lot of fun. And it was kind of like a mystery science fiction 3000 and also Rocky Horror. So we did that, and folks got to partake in that and just have that type of experience. So good news is, for the holidays, Country Gate is back with its Country Gate performers. And the dates are going to be, if you are in the Belvedere, New Jersey area and you have the opportunity, check it out. It's going to be Saturday, December 10th and 17th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or Sunday, December 11th and 18th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. For information about the show and tickets, you can go to the website, which is www.countrygate.org. Also, Bill has a website, which is www.billscarrato.com. You can find out about upcoming projects that are going on. There is a murder mystery that is in the making for February, and I will be posting information about that, which will be taking place also at the Belvedere Manor, and then also at Harker's Hollow, which is the golf course area that's in Harmony Township, New Jersey. So stay tuned and looking forward to it. So the holidays are here and Country Gate is back. Also, Captain Phil, if you can let everybody know what you've got going on.
Country Gate should do Ring Around the Moon. I volunteer to be the Eye of Triton. All right, if you ever want to adapt that, but I just did a great interview with Amanda Lee Falkenberg talking about composers, David, and that's still up on the WUSB website. I'll send it to you. She was great. She wrote this thing called the Moon Symphony, where she wrote music for different moons of the outer solar system: Io, Ganymede, Europa. Miranda was the one we all talked about. We were all excited about that.
It's like a new version of Pulse the Planet.
Beyond that, because she based everything on the current science. So where Holtz is about astrology, she was she consulted with NASA to do this. It's great, and she was a lovely woman. She's from Australia. She was in Dubai when we recorded, and I did it with two SUNY students and Mary Beth. So we had Albany, Massachusetts, Dubai, and Stony Brook University all connected together. It was awesome. So great interview. It's still on the WUSB website. She's a sweetheart. I don't have anything coming up this week, but on the 15th, we'll have the Captain Phil's Planet Holiday Special, featuring my good friend Scarbucket and my own personal speech pathologist, Anne-Marie Strauss, where we will do the reading of the Grinch. And we base it on the Star Wars Holiday Special. That's how bad it is. So tune in for that on the 15th. And I have been doing the regular Friday night freeforms on Friday nights if you have nothing better to do and you want to give yourself an earache. Tune in Friday nights, WUSB.FM.
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, and I actually had the pleasure of being on with Phil last night for a little while.
I made him sick.
Fun, isn't it?
Yeah, I want to give my friends. So Studio One Thrift has been featuring a live broadcast on Facebook. The owners are Snow and Martha, and they showcase their lineup for all seasons all year long. They started this online business about 7 to 8 months ago, and they feature quality, stylish, affordable clothing for men and women. So if you have the opportunity, definitely check it out. You can go to their website. It's www.studio1thrift.com. And again, their merchandise is affordable and it is able to be ordered online. So definitely check it out. And next, I want to, of course, give my my friend, my co-host, Mr. Ross Amico, a plug. Ross does 2 shows besides being on a co-host on this show. He does Picture Perfect, which is on Saturdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then he also does The Lost Chord, which is on Sundays at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can go to his Facebook page, which is Classic Ross Amico, and he has a detailed account of what is going to be discussed on these shows for detailed information. So definitely, again, go to his Facebook page and you can look up. And he also does a teaser on his page about what is going to be happening and then what has been talked about the night after. And speaking of Ross and I will be back as long as I'm capable tomorrow night. And we are going to be doing episode 171, which is going to be Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, which is the classic 1968 film with Dick Van Dyke. We were originally going to do this the Friday after Thanksgiving, but unfortunately I got sick. And then what happened was last night I wasn't able to do it as well, too. I needed to take a break. It's like I said, it's been a rough last 8 days. So bouncing back, but we're going to celebrate this movie. It's not really so much of a science fiction movie. I would say it's a little bit more of a fantasy, but it is a movie that came out on December 16th, 1968. During the 70s, it was shown and showcased a lot on network television around the holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas. So we thought it would be appropriate to discuss this, and we're going to be discussing that tomorrow night.
I saw this thing in the theater. That's how old I am.
Me too. Me too.
So, and then again, a last reminder to everybody, we are currently broadcasting on Facebook, YouTube, and also Twitter. So if you haven't already, if you just take a moment to please subscribe to either one of the pages, we really appreciate it. All your comments are welcome and reviews are welcome. And it's been a wonderful time doing the show. And I can't believe, again, we're going to be coming into the 4th season as of April 3rd next year. I mean, it's about literally almost 4 months away. So, but anyway, if you haven't already, please take the opportunity to do it. It's free to subscribe. There's no charges for that. And we really appreciate that and with your support. So Phil, David, I want to thank you guys for being on with me tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Been a blast.
It's been great. Thank you so much. I enjoyed it. I love talking with you and David about this. I think we only scratched the surface. I think maybe in a year or 2 or 3, we need to do Ring Around the Moon Part 2, Electric Boogaloo. So I think that's what needs to happen at some point again. There's more. We have scratched the surface here.
Let's pick another episode.
No,
we definitely can do that.
No, let's pick an episode we all agree is trash, and we're really gonna have fun with it. Let's talk about All It Glisters.
I'd be up for that. I'd be up for that. That would be awesome.
I was gonna try to have Warren on too, but unfortunately he was not able to make it back. But just so you folks know, if you have the opportunity, I'm not going to just rehash everything, but there is a special event that's going to be planned. It's going to be in Calgary in April of next year. If you go to the Destination Moonbase Alpha page on Facebook, also Space 1999 Fandoms page, you can check out about the details. We're going to be broadcasting and we will be giving updates in regards to this event as it closes. So just so you know, and just so you're aware of that.
We have to reunite Eagle 11 with Eagle 3.
Yes. So that's going to be a big deal.
Because you come, you get to see a real eagle.
Yeah. Exactly. The third 44-inch eagle.
Yeah.
So that's going to be in Calgary next year. So just stay tuned, folks. And then, like I said, there's going to be a lot of information coming down the pike on that, and we will be talking about it. So I wish I could keep going, guys, but for now, just going to sign off with our viewers. Live long and prosper. Of course, always glad to do that.
Not a chance.
You made my weekend, Roy. Thank you so much for inviting me. Feel better.
Thanks so much. Take care, everyone. Be safe, and we hope to see you tomorrow night. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.